has been your biggest surprise for the season so far?
It's a cop-out answer, but I genuinely thought that just playing the odds, I really thought that the Tigers couldn't lose 15 players to injury again. I really thought that wasn't going to happen 2 years in a row. I mean, you think, okay, we went through it last year. Now we can have a healthy year. And it turns out the injury gods do not care about odds. They just want to hurt people. And so I think it's kind of a cop-out answer because we've been talking about it, but I really just constantly struck every time that I see how many people are physically injured on the Tigers for 2 years in a row.
What about you, Yoop?
Well, there's a few. When you mentioned some of the positives, where we already talked about them, but I'll talk about them a little bit more. For me, it's Reese Olson, and I'm a little bit shaded by the fact that I saw him here in Des Moines this spring in what turned out to be his last bad start. So I had bad timing, right? I saw him pitch here in Des Moines. Well, when I was in Des Moines, he looked really mediocre. He was touching 97 in the first inning, but by the third or fourth inning, he was down to 92. He'd really lost his velocity. Was working from behind, hitter after hitter. And boy, if you saw him that night, you would not imagine a month later he was going to be in the big leagues and getting people out. So, and then once he did that, he's managed to stay and has looked really impressive. He's worked in some awkward roles. He's had some starts. He's had some piggyback starts and some middle relief like today. And whatever he's done, he's gone out there and thrown strikes and adapted and gotten the job done to this point. So, like I say, if you had saw him in Des Moines, you would not have seen this coming. So that's why I'll count him as my biggest surprise. And my other sort of biggest surprise is good old Miguel Cabrera has turned it on in spot duty and has had a nice month here where he's not the Mickey of old, but he's not the Mickey we saw at the end of last year when he really couldn't do much. So that's been fun.
Yeah. Did you have something, Trevor?
I was just going to say we might get an Albert Pujols moment out of Miggy. Maybe he'll get to 700 home runs. He's pretty far away, but that'd be a great It'd be a great second half.
Yes. That would be a good second half. Yeah, there have been a lot of surprises. I have one in particular, but I kind of want to save that for another topic. So I'm just going to go with Tyler Holton. I think he's been the biggest surprise. I think a lot of people didn't really even expect him to be on this roster. And
nobody heard of him.
Yeah, no one had heard of him. He's a rookie. I believe a 9th round pick. Obviously they picked him up from Arizona. ERA's been under 2. He's been an absolute workhorse for the Tigers this year. I think he's been the biggest surprise for Detroit. Like other guys, you could look at Matt Vierling. I think he's been pretty surprising as well. Even Riley Green to some extent, I didn't think he would be as good as he's been. But I think, overall, through the whole season, Holton's been healthy and just been an absolute workhorse out of that bullpen. So to me, he'd have to be my biggest surprise.
It's sad that there's so many players that are going through my head right now that you could say, wow, that's a big surprise. I mean, you could still add Jake Rogers, who we haven't talked about. I think you can make a case for Kerry Carpenter a little bit. Maybe that's just me because I wasn't the highest on him when he was a prospect, but what he's doing right now, I mean, it's just the list seems endless on this roster. And that speaks to the win-loss record, I think.